Thank you, Mr. Bird. Thank you to everyone for coming out tonight. My pleasure to share some of what goes on in my classroom with you. Mr. Knight, you're going to be my driver, okay? As you can see there, I'll briefly state that I teach English at the 12th grade level. I teach an IB language and literature course. I teach journalism. Sure. Better? I teach English at the 12th grade level, an IB language and literature course. I teach journalism, levels 1 through 4, and I teach creative writing. And I use technology in all of those classes to varying degrees and for varying means. I'm going to talk a bit generally tonight. If you have any specific questions or any general questions, I'm happy to answer at the end. Sorry, still working on it. That's okay. Can you just use the little arrows in the corner? There we go. I started with this quote because as an English teacher, you could strip away all of the technology that is in my classroom and leave my students with simply a pencil and a piece of paper, and we could still make it happen individually. But I really believe this quote that the creation of literature is a communal act, and I think that if all we had was pen and paper, we still need each other in order to create that. But having access to technology really allows the creation of what we do in our classroom that much more communal. And so the first thing that I really focused on here is collaboration during the writing process. Here you see a photo of two young ladies working together on a project. Obviously, they are collaborating in real life as well as in virtual life there. I'm going to just tilt this so I can read my slides here. Some of the things that we do in terms of collaborating in the writing process. Google has made revising and the process of rewriting and the process of editing our work, it's a godsend to the classroom. It allows for real-time writing conferences between me and my students. If Will was a student of mine, he can be plugging away on an essay or a creative writing assignment. I could be having a real-life conversation with Steve, and I could have my laptop open with a document that Will and I have been working on together and giving him feedback while he's working on that. Or Steve and I could be working on a completely different project virtually while I'm working on this paper with Will virtually. And it really allows me in a classroom full of 24 students, many of whom by this time, 12th grade, we work on a year-long writing project called the Capstone. And by this time of year, students are at varying levels of completedness. Some are done, they've completed everything on every single deadline. And others, for various reasons, they're seniors, yes, but they're also loaded with lots and lots of extracurriculars and IB activities. And this project, we do a lot of work in class. And so they're at various levels of completedness, and I love the collaborating that we get to do with this. They can have conferences with me, as Ms. Mahoney was talking about, on a Saturday when it's snowing, and I can get on my phone and see how Will's doing with his project. Yeah, so this is... These are our comments. This is me and imaginary student working through a document here. It's a really, really simple way, but it has totally transformed the process of writing in my classroom. Not only me and Will and I working together, but it could be Will and Steve working together, and that's been great. When Steve injures his foot here and he's out of school for 2 weeks, that document that they're working on together still gets done, and still gets the level of productivity doesn't dip because of that. Sir. Okay. Collaboration during the reading process. English is, you can boil English down to reading and writing, if you will. That's at its core. So we still read books, absolutely, but the course that I'm teaching now for 12th grade, and we have it in 11th and 12th grade at George Mason, called Language and Literature, and it's really a half language study, half literature study. It allows, it's an IB course, and it allows for a lot of integration of multidimensional text, and that means that it's not just novel after set of poems, but we're also reading advertisements. We're reading the dust jackets of plays and analyzing why an author would write it in a certain way. So while it may not look like this student is doing much, he's actually really engaged with a text there on his laptop. Digital and audio versions of classroom texts for any student who reads better with a pair of headphones on and gets to hear the novel spoken. We just read a book this year called Their Eyes Were Watching God, if any of you are familiar with that. Over half the book is written in a very thick African-American dialect that is often very difficult to read on the page. Having access to the audio versions of that was tremendous for these students to be able to read those words and then hear them spoken. Assistive technology for students who are ESOL, or English as a Second Language learners. It's great for them to have access to texts online and to resources online in the classroom in a real time to be able to read at a higher level. Note-taking and annotating, I'm going to talk about that a little bit in the creation process, but if you go forward, oh, I go forward now, don't I? I control. Okay, we used to read a book when I taught the IB literature course here for a few years called Heart of Darkness, which is a very, very, very dense and challenging text for any student, especially a high school student. Heart of Darkness is only one of many books where there are entire websites dedicated to annotated versions of this. Students who really struggled with it benefited from reading online and just hovering over a word where this was a collective annotation, sort of like a wiki for the book. University students had updated this, but my students could have easily gone in and added things to it. It was a bit of a process to go through that, but it was great reading addition for them in the classroom. Collaboration during the research and project creation process. So these are just some of the tools that we use in the classroom for that. Google, again, has been tremendous in this. Schoology, you saw many of the examples from Mr. Stewart's classroom. They exist in the English classroom as well. iMovie, we create a lot of movies, especially in journalism. We do a lot with video production, but as well as in English, those opportunities are there. Soundcloud, which is an audio recording and creation tool. And one of my personal favorites is Digo, the little D there, that allows for, in terms of project creation, this is another one of my real favorites in the English classroom. And I'm going to talk about that here in just a sec. These two girls are recording a podcast using SoundCloud. But if you look here on the left, that's a screenshot of two students working on a research project using Digo. Digo is basically a web, Steve, I'm going to get it wrong, but it's a social bookmarking site. So you are browsing the vast wasteland of the internet, but you stumble across something wonderful. You want to remember it. You can bookmark it. And you think, hey, this might be really valuable for me in English class. You bookmark it. You can just save it. But then the other really wonderful thing about Digo is I can save it and then share it with my partner in class. And we can start marking it up and annotating it, just like you would as if that was in your notes. So it's really cool because you can do this for websites. So this was an interview with Tobias Wolff, who's the author of another book that we just read, and two students are working here, and they had to do some background research on the author and his own views about his writing, and to mark it here and to so the green and the yellow are two people having a conversation, adding notes. And so if my partner, I can sort of add comments to it. You can log in at midnight or whenever it is that you're doing your research, read my comments, respond back to me. That's been really wonderful. I've really enjoyed using it in the classroom. And again, think about this. You can do this with pencil and paper. There's really nothing innovative about that technology, but what's truly innovative is it expands like when and where this type of research can go on and how deep we can go. And the link on the top there is a link to the podcast. If I won't play it here because I'm going to ask all of you to go check it out via The Lasso, which I am the school sponsor for, our school newspaper. Two young ladies have started a podcast about the goings-on here at George Mason. They've totally taught themselves how to use this audio technology. Mr. Knight is the co-sponsor with me, and really, I think the best thing, the thing that I'm most excited about is we just sort of introduce tools to them. These kids are voracious when it comes to consuming new technology and figuring out ways to incorporate it into their learning. So really, we've sort of sometimes will just introduce, hey, have you seen this? And they just take it and run. And these two girls got really into recording their own podcasts. I encourage you to check it out. So those are some of the ways that I use technology in my classroom. Are there any questions?
When you're talking
Yeah.
about, I forget which one it's called, but the in Heart of Darkness, you
Yes.
how they could cover and
Mm-hmm.
bring up wiki type things.
Right.
So is that like about the same quality as wiki has become?
That one's, yeah, this one's incredibly high quality. I didn't mark whatever the text, the website this came from, I apologize. But yeah, I've done the vetting of that as a teacher. So I've gone and looked at, for this particular text, what are the best web tools out there for them? And for Heart of Darkness, this was a great one. I used to teach T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland, which if you've ever encountered that, involves even more of this. And there's one particular version that's really, really excellent on the web. So students, there's a lot of this that even the annotations went over my head, let alone the student's head, but it was very helpful for them to just, we would have a conversation about a particularly difficult paragraph in class, and they would have that conversation in class and then go back and sort of check what we talked about against what other experts have annotated on this. So, I found that really helpful, but yeah, I have to do a little bit of the vetting of the tools out there. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And there's some that, I looked for one for Their Eyes Were Watching God, and there's just not a good one out there. And, kids, unfortunately, their instinct in English class is to first go to SparkNotes. Their second instinct is Wikipedia or YouTube. And so they found the YouTube, there was a movie made of Their Eyes Were Watching God, and it's terrible. I don't know if anyone's seen it. Don't watch it. But they watched 5 minutes of it, and they're like, wow, this is really bad. Let's go back to reading the book. So, I knew that was out there, and I purposely did not post it to the resources or bring it up in class. But, so they're pretty good. They're pretty knowledgeable consumers as well, I think. So, thanks.